Welcome to episode 145 of Star Wars and Scotch. It's Kevin, joined by my buddy Tim, as always, for more Star Wars and Scotch. How you doing, Tim?
Oh, not bad. Burned my hand with some coffee. I feel like Luke.
Oh, that's a character arc right there.
Yeah. I feel like I'm testing out my hand for the first time.
You look like you are too. The fingers, like the
Tingly.
Well, I hope. If you need me to run over some,
But I can guarantee that King's Coast coffee does not burn your hand. That's just me, my clumsiness.
user error.
Yeah, but I've heard really good things about our Lotus roast. Apparently that's really, really good.
Yeah,
So,
most people have enjoyed the Lotus Roast. We got positive feedback. We had someone on. If you come in and buy in the cafe, I get the messages, and someone said something about Lotus Roast in there, so that was nice. But yeah, Lotus Roast. If you're not familiar, it's our 10th anniversary Digital Extremes Warframe roast. Partnered with our friends there to put this out. So I think there's a limited quantity, and there's only probably 100 or so left. I'm not 100% on that, but definitely a limited quantity. So check out the Lotus Roast. 6th anniversary roast was a great success, so thank you for that. And we're getting into the holidays, so if you know our patterns and you know the roasts that we put out, you know what's coming up. And I think Wayne has something sitting in a barrel right now. I'm not 100% sure.
I feel like for the Dia de los Muertos roast, we should just rename it to like the ET roast.
Why ET?
Because the Mexican government came out yesterday showing alien bodies.
I saw that. I was going to send it to you this morning, but I figured I'd just talk to you about it.
Please, Kevin. I'm on top of all things aliens on TikTok.
Yeah, Tim and Ben, I usually bring something to them, but they've like, that was like 2 days ago, Kevin. The night of the Vegas aliens. Oh, Tim was in a place.
I was already, I was all over that one.
was in a place.
So ET wasn't able to phone home. He got lost in Peru. And so I thought that was interesting.
I'm surprised Pete hasn't sent that over yet this morning. That's very shocking. That's usually something he's on top of. So, maybe we will do a Mexican extraterrestrial roast for Halloween this year. But yeah, kingscoastcoffee.com. Make sure you head over there. If there's any Lotus left, I recommend you pick it up because it is a limited time offering. And get ready for the holidays. You know what that means. All sorts of stuff's coming back. But we're very excited for the future. I don't think we have anything else to promote. Oh, no, we do, because Lab October's next month, and you should definitely be paying attention to Lab 77 because October's next month.
Well, if you head on over to Lab 77 right now, we're selling the rest of Rexzilla's GCX hats, his celebratory nuke hats. So if you'd like to pick up some Rexzilla swag, head over to lab77.co, and we'll have more for you soon.
I could have sworn I saw like 100 people wearing that, but I know you told me the number afterwards, and I was like, really? Because I felt like I saw that hat everywhere at GCX on day 2. It's a pretty sweet hat. So if you don't have it and you're a big fan of Rex, which why wouldn't you be? Make sure you go over to lab77.co .co and grab the hat today. And like we said, pay attention. It's time to dive in, Tim.
Yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, I would like to say right off the bat that you were right. Well, it's not Anakin walking through the veil.
Oh,
that's
I have
off the table.
I have notes.
It's the first time I've ever seen him bring notes.
I have notes on all of this, so I just this is deep. And if people are looking at it at just the surface of just being like, oh yeah, it was a cool like Anakin and Ahsoka meetup, you totally missed the mark. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it is not Anakin walking through. You know, immediately we noticed that he had Darth Vader's lightsaber.
What I missed last week that I noticed after watching this episode for the second time is that the indication that this wasn't actually the world between worlds should have been that we didn't see any doorways. It was like it was not anything like we saw before. Like as I really started to look at where she was, very, very different place. But I think it's very symbolic as to what was happening throughout the episode. So we can jump into that a little bit later on.
So you don't think where they was is the world between worlds?
No, where they were was essentially like a limbo. I mean, like where we leave with Ahsoka is that she gets kicked off a cliff by Balin.
Yes.
She had a near-death experience. She died. She was partially dead. This was her spirit entering in what could have been the cosmic force. And I think what was happening is that this was like what I said last week. This is her trial. This is what all Jedis go through. And I think it's also a representation of the outfit that she wears later on when she becomes Gandalf the White. Is that she went through this trial and came out a different person at the end.
Which is funny because the picture that when people assumed Ahsoka was dead and Dave put the sketch out of her talking to Gandalf, that's what she's wearing, is what she's wearing in this episode.
It's the same garbs that she was wearing at the end of Rebels as well, which I thought was really cool that they brought that entire thing back. If we want to talk about outfits just for a second, all of the wardrobe for this episode was phenomenal.
Oh my gosh.
Getting transported back into Clone Wars, but seeing it in live action. And just the level of detail, just seeing like Ahsoka's, like her little golden headpiece that she has that you've like come to know her to have on in all the episodes of Clone Wars, like just seeing that level of detail was phenomenal. It was so good.
Did you realize the significance of the two places she was transported back to?
Yeah, no, again, notes.
So the first battle was the Battle of Ryloth, which is season 1 of Clone Wars.
It was right. It's right around like she says. This is one of our first missions, and this is essentially when we start to meet Ahsoka. This is the beginning of her relationship with Anakin.
Yep, I immediately picked up on that because there's a ton of Twi'leks with blasters in the background. So I was like, "Is this Battle of Ryloth? That's like season 1 or season 2." Looked it up, season 1. The last one they say flat out, Siege of Mandalore. You weren't here. Got season to see
7.
Live action Maul's Mandalorians, which was awesome. The Captain Rex cameo, like, okay, I loved hearing Tamira Morrison's voice, but that is not a Captain Rex cameo.
I mean, it was Captain Rex. I mean, like that's. It is. It is a Captain / Commander Rex cameo because it is him in live action. It is Rex. That is Rex. That is how we saw him during the Siege of Mandalore. And so, like, yeah, I mean, like that's about as close as we're gonna get to a Rex cameo. Now, I don't think we're gonna see Old Man Rex. I think that was gonna be it.
Yeah, I would assume that would be it. I don't think there's any place in the story for Old Man Rex anymore, if that makes sense.
No,
especially with where we're headed.
The old clones are either like just happy and just enjoying life without war, or they're dead.
I would also like to take a moment to appreciate Hayden Christensen's superb acting in this, because that was not Hayden Christensen from the prequels. That was Clone Wars Hayden Christensen, voiced by Matt Lanter, played by Hayden Christensen. And he did he changed the cadence of his voice. He changed the way he spoke to Ahsoka. He changed all of these things. And to have the thing that we fell in love with in Clone Wars be in front of us in live action, regardless of what Anakin was, whether that's real Anakin or not, or we'll get into that. Regardless of what that was, he was playing that part, and I thought Hayden knocked it out of the damn park, being the Clone Wars version of his character.
Yeah, he owned it. He definitely did his research. He really owned his character. I saw a great quote from an interview with him, and it says that he's so happy that the Star Wars community has finally accepted him for being Anakin, and he said the lesson here, I think, is patience.
Yeah,
because it took a very, very long time for him to really own his role, and I think we've said that for a long time is that he got screwed by the writers.
Oh yeah,
the writing for Anakin was atrocious, and this is what happens when you have good writing for a character, because Hayden owned it, and he did a phenomenal job. Even just down to like the little things, like the choreography in the fights was phenomenal. That's definitely one thing that I wrote down, like seeing Anakin's signature move, like the Annie, like where he spins it behind his back, like little details like that was just really, really cool to see. And to see Hayden do it himself was awesome.
Yeah. I think you got to give credit where credit's due here, and he just he played a different version of his character that was brought to life in animation, and to see him just completely, I don't want to say completely change, but alter the character appropriately to fit that time and place where he never played that character was pretty superb acting, in my opinion. One of the interesting things about this, and I'm going to bring this up because last week the big topic of discussion, and thank you for all those who listened. Like tons of you listened, commented, in Tim and I's debate on whether or not Anakin had walked through the portal into the world between worlds, or if this was a test of the wills. In my opinion, this is 100% a test of the wills, but there is one other theory that I would like to throw in there, Tim, that does lend credence. Could Anakin have ascended to some sort of Mortis godhood and become the father at this point?
No, as you go through these scenes, there are a lot of this makes me believe that these are all this goes to the line that Anakin says, inside of you is all of me, all the knowledge that I possess. And so like that was, I think these are all of the memories, and this is I think this was Ahsoka fighting her, like going through her own trial. It was fighting herself. She like Anakin is her biggest regret, in the sense that he became Vader and she didn't stop it.
Yes.
She wasn't able to save him. And you go through all of these scenes, the clones dying. She blames herself for the clones dying. Anakin, like the Siege of Mandalore, like all of these things, she blames herself for this. Killing the clones during Order 66 killed her, like crushed her spirit. Sabine is another failure of hers. She's constantly running away instead of facing her fears and owning them and allowing those trials to make her a better person.
Yeah.
She turns away from them. And so I still don't believe that that is anything other than a shadow. And that's why this episode is called Shadow Warrior. Mm-hmm. He is a shadow. He's nothing more than a reflection of all of her memories culminating into this thing that she has to fight. She has to overcome. I don't think that this is anything other than just it's inside her head.
So you think she had a near-death experience, which someone in we have a spoiler channel in Discord where we discuss this stuff. You think she had a near-death experience? And again, I'm just analyzing. Near-death experience, kind of coming to grips, like most people would have when they have a near-death experience, like a light flashes before you scenario.
Yeah, this was. I mean, if you even want to get more spiritual, I think this was kind of like a limbo. I think her body, I think her spirit started to. It left her body. It went into the cosmic force, and it was that deciding factor. This whole live or die. The force was allowing her to make the decision of: do you want to go? Are you done? Is this it? Or are you ready to face your fears and live? And so that's why it's constantly going back, and that's why I think it was like I have more things to teach you. Yeah, I don't think it was really the spirit of Anakin. I don't think it was Force Ghost Anakin. I think it was like, hey, there is more to this. There is a lot more going on than what you see. It says where are the notes? It says she says that my legacy is she says exactly what Balin says to her. She's my legacy is nothing but death and war. And Anakin even says, then you fail to see the lesson. You don't understand. There's more to this than just that. And so I think she was so caught up in being a warrior that she really was missing the lessons that Anakin was trying to teach her. I think if you go back to the animated what was Tales of the Jedi. If you go back to Tales of the Jedi, you go to Ahsoka's story, and Anakin is teaching her the only way that he knows how to teach her.
Yeah, one thing on that too, and one of my immediate thoughts was it was very purposeful for them to make that episode in Tales of the Jedi as a precursor to all of this. It was not something that like, oh, that was cute and it kind of aligns.
It wasn't for shits and giggles.
No, Dave totally was like, no, this needs to be a part of the story. And, you know, if you watch that after watching Clone Wars, you're like, oh my God, that means so much more as to what happened. And that because the ones who are training her are the ones she ends up killing. Mm-hmm. And then to fast forward to this, it's all a part, and it's the classic Star Wars. Like, we're going to tell this story over the course. When did the last season of Clone Wars come out? 2 years ago? So this is a 2-year story arc now we're getting into. It's just, it's that Star Wars. That's how they story tell. It takes years and years sometimes for plots to come full circle. So one other interesting thing I heard was if George Lucas's saga, episodes 1 through 6, not 7, 8, and 9, put that on the shelf for a second. If George Lucas's saga, who is it about? It's not about Luke. It's about Anakin, right? It's the fall and rise of Darth Vader, and then the fall of Darth Vader and the rise of Anakin.
You could also argue that it's also like Palpatine is very much so like intertwined into that as well.
Of course. As you know, but every good hero needs a villain type of
Most definitely.
situation. The interesting thing about that is if you look at Legends, the story then turned to Luke and Mara Jade and their son Ben and we've abandoned that story for the storytelling in Disney. Wouldn't it make sense if the stories are about Anakin for his apprentice to become one of the major figures in the storytelling? Now, we have to intertwine this appropriately because Ahsoka came after all of this, and she's an invented character that came later by Dave Filoni. Approved by George Lucas, by the way, because George was still working on Clone Wars when Ahsoka was created. Now, with that, it makes sense for the transition of the story. Yes, I know we have Luke. We're still telling stories about Luke. Put on the shelf for a second. It makes sense for Ahsoka to have her moment in this saga. And we have never, ever, ever seen them together outside after Revenge of the Sith, except for Malachor. That was it. And the space battle. This is the first time they're face to face where he's not straight up Darth Vader. And like you said, it's a spirit. It could be the Wills. It's not him. I understand that. But for her, she is facing her failure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all of this is about Ahsoka's traumas.
Yep.
And how does she overcome them?
Yep.
And Anakin, even though that was her master and her best friend, the line of like, I won't fight you is the same line that Luke says to him in Return of the Jedi. That's why he says, I've heard that before. Like that was definitely a nod to Return of the Jedi. That was also, or it could also be she says, I won't leave you on Malachor. So like, that's why I thought was really cool too, of this whole, like, I won't fight you. Mm-hmm. Again, she didn't want to face that. She did. And then also the other thing too, is that she's so afraid of the dark side. She knows that she's walking that fine line. When she grabs his lightsaber and puts it to his throat, as she gets closer to the lightsaber, her eyes change. She gets Sith eyes. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, she's so afraid and she's so fearful. And I think that's one of the biggest things that this showed is that she's more than, she is not a Jedi. She has attachment. She's scared. She has fear. She has all of the qualities that Anakin has. And that scares the shit out of her because she doesn't want to become Darth Vader.
Right. Yeah.
She doesn't want to become what he became because everyone's telling her that she's going to. She thinks that her future is determined. She thinks that it's all predestined. That because her master was so, as Hu Yang says, he was intense. He was intense, and she, in that intensity and the lack of and this conviction that Anakin has, and he says, "You lack conviction." There are so many little things that point to Ahsoka being everything that a Jedi is not supposed to be.
Let me ask you something. Hu Yang's response was interesting there. Given that Hu Yang has access to the Jedi archives, he would have had access to the holo recording that Yoda and Obi-Wan saw.
Sure.
Would that not mean that Hu Yang's in the know on who Anakin is?
I mean, a lot of people, I would assume a lot of people know by now who Anakin Skywalker became. I'm sure that story made its way through.
Isn't it supposed to be a big secret though? Like
during the rule of the Empire.
Even afterwards though, they're open about it?
I don't think that was something that they tried to hide. I think everybody kind of knew. I would assume that the stories of Luke Skywalker and the defeat of the Empire and the fall of the Emperor those stories would be told.
But the correlation between Anakin and
I don't see why you'd
Darth.
want to keep that a secret. Now I could understand why you'd want to keep a secret why you wouldn't want people to believe that Darth Vader is Anakin because Anakin was a hero of the Republic. They'd lose faith, they'd lose hope in their Emperor. You can't show off that your big bad henchman was a good guy.
Because Hera even seemed shocked by the response a bit.
That he was intense? I don't think so. I mean, she just asked, what was he like?
She made a weird
She didn't
face.
ask, who did he become? She didn't. She wanted to know who Anakin Skywalker was. She didn't want to know about Darth Vader. She knows Darth Vader.
Speaking of Hera, I loved the Carson saying like, Senator Organa is running interference for us.
Yeah, all of that, the back and forth between Tiba and Hera was fantastic.
But just even the drop of Leia's name in there, knowing that she's a troublemaker in that sense, made me so.
I mean,
happy.
they did missions together.
I know, that's what made me so happy.
So like I love that. I think that's fantastic. There was a lot of synergy in this episode for sure, and it was. I will say I enjoyed the first part way more than the second part. Once we got Ahsoka back into the real world, that's when I really started to lose my enjoyment for this episode. I really wish they would have kept going. I think there's still a lot left in what they were trying, like what they've done so far with this whole Ahsoka going into this world between worlds, finding Anakin, like that was a huge cliffhanger for something that wasn't as impactful as I thought it was going to be for the overall Thrawn, Ezra, Sabine storyline. Like it was no longer Rebels.
Yeah,
this was Ahsoka's story, and it's just like it was kind of a roller coaster, or like whiplash. Like, oh, I'm in a minute. Oh, I got ripped out of it because I was hoping for more. There was a lot left. Like the lessons I'm trying to teach you. Like we could have gone deeper. We could have gone farther into her, like what she's trying to achieve, or what was trying to be achieved with her interaction with Anakin. And so I hope this is something that we get to see again.
Yeah,
but I don't think we will. I think that's it. I think the way that this episode ended, and we'll get to that at some point. The way this episode ended was kind of a sign off. It was a love letter to Clone Wars, I think, through Dave Filoni.
I think
because now we're off to the next part.
I think we'll get it in ancillary content. I don't think you're getting any closure in the show on what happened. I think it'll be piecemealed out, just like other, situations like that in the past where, whether someone else has a similar experience or whatever it may be, I think that's it. Like we're done with that. Was the last time we're going to see Hayden on this show, type of thing.
Potentially. I mean, I still think there's a lot of room for Force Ghost Anakin to show up. That would because why I say that is because Luke had Yoda visit him in episode 9 or 8. And like I think that was like very impactful. And so I think what will happen is that when we get to this next part with Thrawn and Morgan and Ezra and whatever, like and Balin and Shin and like all these characters, and Ahsoka's essentially by herself. It's just her and Hu Yang now against all of this. I think she's going to have a moment where she is afraid and alone. And she's like, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. And I think Anakin will show up and he's like, have I taught you nothing, Snips? And it's going to be like another one of those things, but it will be true Anakin this time. My crazy potential theory of the week. There's more focus on Jason than I thought there would be. Yeah, I really like that. I wrote that down as like this whole like him having abilities, as Hu Yang put it. Is very interesting. I thought that was really, really cool.
There's a couple things to explore there. Number one, obviously, he inherited force powers from his father's line. Number two, I was very close to waiting to hear like, "Hey, kid," in Freddie Prinze Jr.'s.
Oh, FPJ just shows up and Force Ghost. Yeah, that'd be sick.
And I think I wouldn't say it's off the table still. That could be our after credits scene for all we know. Like
oh my god, what we get like a Return of the Jedi? Everyone's celebrating at the end, and like the Force Ghosts are hanging out.
Well, even just maybe his dad can help guide him because he has no guidance. Ahsoka doesn't really seem like she's willing to help him, and Hera doesn't seem like she wants him to chase that. Probably because of what happened to her father.
Well, she saw what happened to her lover. He died. He died for all of that. I think what was interesting is that if this whole near-death experience, spirit transcending Jedi limbo thing, if this is real, I think there is more to Jason than like what we like than him just being Force sensitive.
That's where I'm going.
I think because of the wolves and him and his dad being who he is, being Dune, I think there is more of a spirituality. I think we're starting to get more again into this spiritual part of Star Wars that we've never really gotten into before. We've never really gotten into the nuts and bolts of the Force and what makes Jedi so special. This whole idea of these wolves that can just go through space and time, and knowing that Jason can somehow hear these lightsabers crashing against each other through the waves. Like there's a lot here. There's a lot to piece together, and I think we're gonna really start getting into the nitty gritty part of what makes Star Wars so special. And it's not just going to be space Nazis. I don't think it's going to be any more the big focus on space Nazis when it comes to like Ahsoka. I think we did a great job looking at that with Andor and really like hitting home that the Empire is evil and terrible and all that stuff. And I think now we can get away from that a little bit. We don't have to focus on the First Order. We can focus more on like what makes Star Wars so special and unique, and like what makes a Force user, and like what's the difference between Jedi and Sith. Like I think that's where really where we're going to go.
Well, it also brings up the potential for Kanan to meet. Not Kanan, Jason to meet Luke at some point for training.
Oh, sure. Most definitely.
It opens that door, so now we have Jason, we have Grogu, we have Ben Solo, and we have the ones
Luke's
we
ranks
met
are
in the
starting to
comic.
fill in more.
Yeah, like it's starting to become more prevalent. You have Broom Kid. Well, that's
Broom
Kid's
Broom Kid's after the fact.
Yeah, but they're going back in a way. It's almost to say like you can't get rid of the Force users in the galaxy. They'll always be there because the Force is always there. So at some point, you're always going to have Sith. You're always going to have Jedi. You're going to
always have things like Bendu. You have these things that are kind of just like are out there, just using the Force, but in different ways.
The spiritual side, Bendu represents exactly what you just said. The spiritual side of all of this, like that's the stuff that hasn't made it into live action.
And so does the father and the
Mortis.
son and the daughter.
Yep.
Like that is definitely that spiritual side that we got a taste of.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a side that they're just like dipping the toe into the water now on the crazy. In my opinion, I would even venture to say the more fantasy, less sci-fi side
very
of
much so.
Star Wars. The mystical, magical part of it. So it's an interesting thing to look at how much they're using Jason, and I'll be interested to see how much more they use him. Also, Chopper continues.
Him and Chopper together are great,
and the comic relief of Chopper. If you can pick up on the things he's saying, if not. Spend 2 minutes on TikTok the next day after the episode, and people have translated everything Chopper says. Chopper is hilarious, but he is an asshole.
Yeah, he doesn't care, and I love him. I think he's great. I just love him. Did you touch my top? It's just like when him. I didn't realize all of the things that he was saying to Hera.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was just really beeps and boops, and then someone translated all. Yep. And I'm just like, oh shit, he did say, "Did you touch my stuff? Where is my thing?"
Yeah. Yeah,
and then he mocks her at one point. Like it's so good.
Yeah, he's a little asshole. So
and watching his kill list increase, like I forgot that he just completely wiped out a Star Destroyer.
Yeah, he's a war criminal.
Like he's a war criminal. He's totally committed war crimes, but it's okay because he's a robot and he's cute.
Yeah. Chopper is 100% a war criminal. Did you see Hera and Chopper at Disneyland?
Yeah, I saw that, and they also have Ahsoka.
We have Ahsoka here.
Yeah, but you can now. But now they also have Sabine and Chopper.
Oh, Sabine too?
And not Sabine. Hera and Chopper at Black Spire Outpost.
Here,
Black Spire Outpost is like now officially I think the worst Star Wars area because it is so confusing. Like they need to get rid of the episode 7, 8, and 9 stuff. And just make it a very much so just like neutral spot that is going to fit in a certain timeline because we are all over the place.
Should have just made it Coruscant or Tatooine.
But I think that's why they only go to certain spots like Mando only goes on like the side that's closer to Muppets. Mm-hmm. He's never out by the First Order stuff.
Yeah.
He's never by Kylo Ren ship. It's just like so I think like that's how they kind of get away with it. But it's wild because they said that it was going to be a story piece telling, part of Disney and Star Wars, and then they realized that was going to backfire on them. So now what?
Yeah, they're $200 million disaster on the Star Cruiser. So yeah, but it is what it is, So I'm just going through the. we burned through most of this. So one of the
No,
interesting
we
things,
have not. No. We have space whales to talk about, Kevin.
I'm talking about the Pinocchioing to the other
Oh,
galaxy.
no. We didn't Pinocchio. We were going to, we found P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney.
I didn't even think of Nemo.
No, we fucking Nemo'd ourselves into Star Wars, Kevin. But we can talk about that right after this commercial break. So P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney.
That's so good.
Did you know Ahsoka could speak Orca?
Well, she can't very well. She's like Dory. She can't very well. She's like, I have no idea.
I have no idea what has happened. Yeah, I don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere. It's better than going nowhere. I thought it was great, but it was like the whole thing of just like get in the mouth, and I'm like, that's literally what Dory tells Marlin.
That line is so good. I don't know where we're going, but it's better than going nowhere. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Yeah, like, it was great. Well, she comes out a completely different person. Like, okay, we can go back to, because like when we have a tonal shift in the show is when Ahsoka wakes up underwater. Also, I want to know how long was she underwater for? Because if like Togrutas must have amazing lungs.
That's my only pushback on the near death is like they were in a search and rescue for hours, it appeared. So that would be my only pushback on.
Hey man, Leia was able to fly through fucking space, so
yeah,
anything's possible with when the force intervenes. I think that's what happened. I think what happened with Ahsoka in the water, I think that is the same thing that happened with Leia being blasted out of the bridge.
But and
she's just floating in space.
That is why I would not discount the fact that she could have actually gone to a place in the world between worlds, because we don't fully understand what it is. We don't fully understand how it works. For all we know, there could be a part of it that is,
That's
Star
why
Wars
I said it was
purgatory.
more of like
We have no idea.
That's why I said it was more of like a limbo experience for her. I really truly I don't think her body went anywhere.
And Jason,
her body stayed in the water because while she is in this dreamlike state, or she's in the world between worlds, right? She was still in the water because Chopper was able to find her while she was still there.
Or Chopper found the doorway that the Force had opened and closed.
He said that he found. I mean, he said that he found something, but
and fly low. That was it.
That's why I would think that her body was in the water.
I'm open to either one. It works. It's just the only question I would have is
watch how, but then
the breath.
also watch how the ending of when the world between world. Why would this world compress in on itself and become the water that she was laying in? That's why I think it was more of a visual representation of what was happening to her. She left and went into like this ethereal realm, and then she was placed back into her body that was in the water. And like you literally see it happen. All of the stars come down. It meets like the spiritual realm and the physical realm come back into this middle ground area. It's almost like when they in Pirates. Here comes another Disney movie. It's like in Pirates of the Caribbean when they go upside down. It's a lot like that, where like the water comes in, she kind of sinks through, and then she's back into the real world. But regardless,
yeah.
That was a huge tonal shift. She went through, and that's why like her becoming like Gandalf the White. She became Ahsoka the White. Like that was the reincarnation of Ahsoka. Just like Gandalf coming back, that was a reincarnation of him.
Well,
I think there's a lot of iconology going on. There's a lot.
Well,
like Dave went burr.
We know Dave is a huge Lord of the Rings fan. We know Dave is a huge Tolkien fan. And it's funny because Dave hinted at literally this moment happening 2-3 years ago with that sketch.
Wouldn't the Battle of the Balrog and Gandalf almost be very similar to what Ahsoka did with Anakin? You're the Lord of the Rings buff. I'm not.
In what way? I'm not saying no. Just
the whole like
process.
didn't Gandalf essentially go to hell? Like wasn't that kind of like a Jesus moment? Like he went to hell to fight the Balrog and then come back?
No, what happened was the Balrog and Gandalf are on the same level of power of what was given to them by the gods of Middle Earth. And the Balrog's intent was not necessarily to take the ring, but that, how do I explain it? It's very difficult to explain, honestly. Anyway, what happens is they end up fighting. They go to this place. It is very similar to a world between worlds because it does not exist in the spiritual or the physical. It is some limbo just like that. Fights him, smotes his ruin on the mountainside. Now, the mountainside that the ruin gets smote on is physical. Like, you can go and see the body of the Balrog. It is a physical place. But it's lost all of its fire and everything. Gandalf then dies. Gandalf goes to not Valinor, but whatever wizard heaven thing they have. And basically the gods or whoever is running this, you never really know, says, your purpose is not done because of what Saruman did. Saruman is not fulfilling his purpose, which I guess you could say could be akin to Anakin in a way. Saruman was sent to do something. Saruman is not doing thing. We're going to give you his power to take him down and then, move forward and restore Middle Earth to what it's supposed to be and wipe the evil off the planet. A little bit different because the Force is trying to stay in balance versus Middle Earth where the good is trying to defeat the evil. But that's the whole purpose of that moment.
Man, there's a lot there.
Is essentially that Saruman, it's more Saruman than the Balrog. Saruman was supposed to be Saruman the White. He has violated the covenant and the mission that he was given when he was sent to Earth as one of the 5 wizards, Middle Earth. And then they're going to send Gandalf back to take him out to be what Saruman could never be. So use that with
Ahsoka could be everything that Anakin was supposed to be.
But wouldn't you say that, like previously, again, devil's advocate, wouldn't you say that was reserved for Luke?
No. I think Luke is something that Ahsoka could never be. In the sense is that he could face his father. Mm-hmm. He found that courage. He was able to do it. She wasn't. She wasn't able to do it. He went to him. Right. He tried to turn him. He does turn him. He's able to bring Anakin back to light. Ahsoka wasn't able to do that.
Well, I mean, if you go with the iconography, it's Anakin fought Obi-Wan, had his moment there. Anakin fights Ahsoka, has his moment there. And it's the opposite side of the helmet each time. And then Luke is the one that actually is able to remove the veil of Darth Vader, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think it's more so like I'm curious to see, because it's like we're getting into the spiritual stuff. Luke isn't in that spiritual part, but Ahsoka is. Anakin is.
Well, if you,
I think there's more to it.
Remember,
I think there's something there.
Don't forget the book we read with Luke and Anakin communicating. What was it? The Sith one? I can't remember. The one, it was like last summer.
The Shadows of the Sith?
Shadows of the Sith. Yeah. Remember that. Like, Luke is very into the spiritual stuff because he's in that weird place with his father at one point in the book where his father can barely talk to him, remember?
Yeah, but was that him, or was that the influence of the dark side?
Or was it a similar situation to what we experienced, maybe not near death, but the Force, again, acting in a way to get through to him? Because my interpretation of the Force, and please, chat, correct me if I'm wrong, my interpretation of the Force is when the Force is out of balance, it will make efforts to put itself back in balance.
Yeah, that part is still...
And then people are going to say, like, oh, what about the thousands of years the Jedi, were there? There was always Sith. And the Sith are the one who instituted their own rule of 2. That wasn't, like, mandated by the Force. That was Darth Bane, who was like, nah, y'all don't know what you're doing. Like, we're only going to have a master and apprentice. And, then you find out, yeah, there's probably master and apprentice, but there's probably on this side of the galaxy a master and apprentice too. And then when they meet, they're going to kill each other. Like, that's just how the Sith are. So the balance might not mean numbers per se. Mm-hmm. Balance might mean a balance of power within the Force. And again, you have to remember from episode 4, 5, and 6 to where we are now, we're redefining
a lot.
Jedi, the light side, things like that. Because the light side has a pious aspect to it that is no good. The dark side has a gray area right on the line of balance where there's Sith that weren't evil, So it's a scale, it's a sliding scale on purpose. So, again, going back to your Lord of the Rings metaphor, if you will, it's interesting to look at it from the standpoint of comparing Anakin to Saruman. And I never thought of this until you brought it up. Because of the, you didn't do what you were intended to do by mystical force that runs the universe. So I'm going to replace you with person. Now, like you said, Anakin was redeemed. Saruman doesn't get redeemed. He gets tossed off a building onto a spike, somehow lives, comes back to scourge the Shire, and then gets killed by the hobbits.
I mean, Star Wars is made for kids. I don't think Lord of the Rings was. Lord of the Rings was very complicated.
Ironically, The Hobbit was a children's tale.
Yeah, The Hobbit was, but Lord of the Rings itself is very.
No.
That is some adult level like thinking.
That is a man who was bored and had a notebook.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, like Star Wars is for kids, and you want that character to have that redemption arc. Like,
But
it would be so sad if he never had that opportunity.
Yeah, it was teased 2-3 years ago when Gandalf, he did the sketch and it was like everyone thought I was dead too, and here we are, the moment that it happened, and I'm curious how many people actually remember that, because that was, for me as a fan of both, that was such a cool moment, and to know that Ahsoka was still alive, and then we got the announcement of the show and all that stuff. So. Yeah,
it's interesting. A lot of people could have taken that scene at the end of episode 4 as her death.
right.
You could have and a lot of people didn't. A lot of people took the world between worlds as a literal world between worlds, where it most definitely could have been Ahsoka's near death moment, but then she was able to come back. And so like now like really starting to think about the whole Lord of the Rings like post and that sketching. He was foreshadowing what he was going to do with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And there was an interview at some point at Star Wars Celebration where the voice actress for Ahsoka in the cartoon was talking about Dave's plans for killing Ahsoka. There was an actual end that was planned out for Ahsoka. She was going to die to Ventress. Ventress was going to kill her.
Ashley Eckstein, right, is the actress?
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah.
And apparently they were going through a bunch of different things. And she was like, oh, do you remember that one conversation we had, Dave? And Dave's like, shut the fuck up. Like the whole thing is like very uncomfortable. And she's like, yeah, do you remember that? And he's like, oh.
Because they didn't think Ahsoka was going to blow up the way she did in that.
No, she is like, I think, the most beloved Star Wars character.
Because she's the Grey Jedi without the word. Like,
Yes.
that's what she is. She's Disney's, the Grey Jedi, which is, when you go back into Legends, yeah, the name is dumb, but the principles are there. And that is what people relate to more than they relate to a Jedi, more than they relate to a Sith, is the principles of that balance of, yes, I fight with anger, but it's justified against, keeping peace and protecting people and whatnot. Yes, I will take a lover and mate and have children and, be what I'm supposed to be as a person, as a human, or a being. So I think that's why she's very relatable. And that's why Kanan was relatable too, because Kanan was a Jedi, but he broke all the rules too,
That's why I like the High Republic Jedi so much too. Like, is it Greyjoy? Crap.
That's Game of Thrones.
It's been a bit.
Yeah, that's Game of Thrones. Who's the one Jedi that oh crap.
The one who got
Anyways, the one that was
on.
the one that was kind of like having a hard time dealing with the teaching of the Jedi. I forgot who it was.
Was it
Someone
Elzar?
It might. I don't think it might have been Elzar Man.
Or
I don't
Stellan?
remember.
Which one? I get them confused. I think it was Elzar.
Oh, I think it was Stellan Jarrus. Is it Jarrus?
Geos.
No, that's Kanan Jarrus. God, there's so many. I have to go back to High Republic.
It's the one who didn't die.
It's the one that didn't die. He ends up.
I'm scrolling. Hold on.
There's a part in one of the books where he's talking about like he's dealing with these issues of the Jedi teaching, and it goes against everything that he feels like makes you special and a Jedi.
It's Elzar.
He's like, how
Stellan.
it's Elzar, man. And he's like, you can't love, like how can you give everything to the Jedi Order without feeling emotion, without having compassion and attachment and love and all of these things. And so like hearing more of that and recognizing that all of these characters deal with these issues, and that there is a different way to go about being a quote unquote Jedi. I like that a lot more than your goody two shoes like Mace Windu in episode 1. The boy's too old. You know, it's just like
Also, Mace is not a goody two shoes. He's just hiding.
he's a badass, but like he sits there on his throne all pious like, boy's too old.
Yeah, but he is the one. Like, he could have beat Palpatine if he really wanted to, but Anakin was there because you know why? Because Mace fought with anger, that he tapped into his dark side to fight. That's why he was such a good warrior. I brought it up last week. I'll bring it up again. I really recommend Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade because it deals with everything we're talking about now. It's starting with the beginning of the Clone Wars, Jedi and Apprentice. Like I said, we don't know what race she is. My assumption at the moment is she's a Sith pureblood, and no one's telling her. But I don't want to give away too much, but dealing with loss, dealing with the death of your fellow Jedi during the Clone Wars and how sudden it was, and how the struggle of we weren't supposed to form attachments, but how do we not form attachments to people we live with and work with and and have community with essentially is relatively impossible. So again, I highly recommend it. I don't want to give too much away. I think for you, it has a lot of that. It has a lot of the Sith stuff that I think is just scratching the surface where I'm at in the book. I think it's gonna go
I started
deeper.
listening to the opening, and it was like, this book deals with suicide. I was like, I was getting ready to go on a plane, and I was like, I don't know if I'm mentally ready for this yet. So I put it away, and I was like, I'll come back to this at another point.
I haven't gotten to that point.
I've had to deal with suicide in my life with people that I know, so it's just kind of like I wasn't like in the right place to be like for that in that moment. So I was like, I'll come back to this when I'm not like traveling and I'm like stressed out about like being in a plane.
And I think too that was I haven't gotten to the part that happens, but I think that was a wise decision to
I'm glad that
disclaimer in.
they're like, hey, like there was a little warning before you get into it. Like, by the way, like this is a thing that could like that'll come up.
You don't
I
go into
appreciate
Star
that.
Wars expecting that, like, so it was wise.
No.
And the author's anecdote about dealing with it personally, I think was
Yeah, I thought it was good.
yeah. So when you're ready, I recommend it. It deals with everything we're talking about right now, and again, another POV of someone that existed. So I'm in like one of the first missions that the main character's on in the Clone Wars, and we already met some poison-beaked birds that stabbed a Jedi to death.
Oh, nice.
So
Great.
good stuff.
Cool.
One other thing on the Carson Tiva stuff, he references the Delphi base again. That's the base we see where we met what's his face from Rebels at the end of Mandalorian. What's his name?
I don't know.
Purple guy.
Oh, Zeb.
Thank you, Zeb. When we met Zeb, that was a Delphi base. So another reference to that.
He'll show up again, I'm sure.
One of the other things that kind of skated by is the force power of psychometry, which is what Ahsoka was using to piece together what had happened to Sabine.
Yeah, the whole like so when she comes back, first off, before we we were kind of getting into the tonal shift and then we went off a tangent. Real quick, I want to say that Ariana Greenblatt, I want to see her as a like baby Ahsoka for a while. Like I really hope that at some point we get like a live action Clone Wars, like even if it's just like an offshoot and it's just like an hour-long special, whatever, but like she really owned young Ahsoka, and so just hats off to her for just crushing that role. I just was very, very impressed.
Yeah.
Anyways,
even the aging between, I give again, I think it was, I'm going to assume it was ILM that worked on this. Even the aging between the Battle of Ryloth and the Siege of Mandalore, like the little details on
for
Ahsoka.
Hayden,
On Ahsoka
for
and
Ahsoka,
Hayden.
yeah. The de-aging and re-aging on Hayden was wild. Like seeing him in episode 1 of Clone Wars when he had like his short hair, and then you get to season 7 when he's got his long hair, and then his face changes again when you go into Rise of the Sith, and so it's just a Return of the Rise of the Sith,
Revenge.
Return of the Sith, Revenge of the Sith, episode 3. When you get to that point and like his face is kind of like just like pale, and he's got the eyes and all that stuff. Like it was so well done. The transition was great. Like at the end of episode 4, it was a little jarring. Like you're like, nah, they used the de-aging thing. But during episode 5, it looked so natural. Mm-hmm. A lot of it looked like it was just Hayden Christensen. Like it was just like nothing felt like out of the ordinary for that. So I thought that was really well.
They
done.
avoided tight shots to really like use makeup appropriately, which was smart. I'm not blasting. I think it was a smart decision. So yeah, I agree with you. I think he felt very natural. Also, I did see the scar immediately when he walked by her, and I was like, there it is. It was hiding.
Yep.
What I found interesting too was everyone was like, oh my God, it's Vader's lightsaber. It's Vader's lightsaber at the end of episode 4. And then the beginning of episode 5, so I was like, no, that's Anakin's lightsaber. So I have a
They
feeling
went back and forth.
Exactly. They were playing tricks on us because he kept pulling out a different lightsaber too when he would fight her.
And she pulled out different lightsabers. She had her green lightsaber, single lightsaber in episode 1, season 1 of Rebels. And then you get to season 7, episode 6 or whatever, and she's got her dual lightsabers that are blue, but different hilts. And then you get to her fight in Dreamland, and she's got her katana style lightsabers. So like it was really cool just to even watch all of that. And even just like Anakin's lightsaber going red and blue, Anakin transforming from Anakin to Vader and back to Anakin again. Like all of these shots were just so well done, and you really have to like. I'm glad I went back and watched them again because there are just little things that they put there for you to go back and enjoy time and time again.
Another point too to support your death dreamlike state is that her katana lightsabers were knocked off the bridge, and she's still wearing them when she like resurfaces through the water scene. They're still clipped to her belt.
Wait, say that one more time. Sorry.
When the final time she fights Anakin, he disarms her and knocks her lightsabers off of the bridge into the void or whatever the hell it is. But when she resurfaces through the water, they're both clipped to her belt still.
That's why I still fervently believe that was more of a dream and a spiritual representation of what was happening to her versus a physical thing that happened to her.
Yeah.
Anyways, off to Finding Nemo. So, Ahsoka in the whole like being able to read force imprints was really interesting. I thought that was kind of like, it was cool, but at the same time, like I was still like, we've never really seen like Jedi use that ability before. So what was it called? It was called force
Psychometry.
Psychometry.
That's what Cal Kestis uses quite often in the games. He's probably the most famous Jedi to have that power that we know of. His echoes in the Force that he sees and everything, that's psychometry. That's essentially what Ahsoka was doing.
Gotcha.
But yeah. I kept saying Pinocchio. Now I can't think it's not Nemo with the
so
the
originally that's the thing that I yelled. I was like, oh, we're Pinocchioing this thing. And then it was like, oh, she's going to get out of the ship and she's going to talk to this thing. And then she said, get inside. And I'm like, oh, this is Finding Nemo. So we've got Treasure Planet and Finding Nemo.
Treasure
I was a
Planet.
little, I was a little like, I get it. Like there's no other way to do this. Like they took the Eye of Sion. They have the actual trajectory as to where they need to go. And they're just like, maybe you can get us to Australia. You know, it's just like, it's so hard for me not to think of Nemo with all of those shots. Cause like, that's just, they had to use something bigger than themselves to get them where they needed to go. And the Purgles are the only thing that made sense.
I mean, like it's an interesting parallel, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dave was like, whatever, we'll throw a nod that way. I can't stop thinking about it now because it's like it's like right on. And the fact that Dory could barely speak whale was the funniest part of the goods. Ahsoka couldn't speak Purgle too well, but she got in there. So I thought Hera was going to go with them. I'm curious. Hera's going to go face that court martial by herself now.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why she didn't want to take Jason.
Of course.
Can understand like why like her place wasn't there, but it was to be here. I think it also could help with like as they return, because they have to come back, and I would assume Thrawn ends up coming back with them, and like they're gonna fight whatever like the big bad thing is. Like Hera's gonna be there to like be the defense. So I'm sure they'll have the big happy family reunion at the end. But yeah, it was very interesting that she's going to be off and she's going to have to deal with this on her own. I'm very curious, are they going to strip her of her rank, or is she going to, is she really going to be able to convince
the New Republic that, hey, there is something dangerous out there. There is something big and bad coming.
I think at first it might not go well for her, but obviously they're going to return to the galaxy and Thrawn will be with them. The biggest question becomes, is Thrawn in the know about something worse out there? Like, that's where my head is at. Is this all a diversion to the Grisk, the Yuzong Fong, something we haven't encountered? Is there something worse out there? Now, what am I hoping for? I hope when we get there, we learn more about the Night Sisters. Some Rakata references would be nice. Hell, we might even get some Zepho stuff finally, Tim. I don't think we will.
Hope so. I don't think we will. I think they're going to keep that for episode 3 of Jedi.
But I am curious on, are we diverging into Legends Thrawn where he is trying to take over, or are we sticking with Disney Thrawn where he's more concerned about the threats to the Chiss and essentially the greater galaxy at that point?
I don't know. I mean, like, there's still a very big difference between the Thrawn that's in Rebels and the Thrawn that's in literature.
And we're gonna
in the new Timothy Zahn stuff. So I don't know. We still haven't met what live action Thrawn is like.
But Zahn worked on this show too.
Right? Yeah. He was a part of all this, part of the writing. So I would assume it's going to be a closer representation to the Thrawn that we have in the books, because I feel like that would be a big spit in the face to Timothy Zahn and like all of that work that he did on those books to really develop that character in like the leading up to the introduction to him in Rebels, and then also all of the pre-stuff getting you to when he becomes a part of the Empire. So I really hope that it's going to be something more along the lines of like Thrawn is trying to protect the galaxy from a bigger threat.
Yeah. I hope that's it, because I think to fill in the gap here, it'd be really nice for the First Order to build itself over time while something more important is threatening the galaxy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, I would rather see that come to light and have a bigger threat, be looming over us than deal with the First Order, just like, hey, we're here. Shadow Council, da-da-da-da. Like, the remnants of the Empire can still continue to do what they do, but I think the New Republic being focused on something much worse for the time would be
because it doesn't make sense for them to fight the Shadow Council and the Imperial remnants and then they fight them. I mean, it's like it would end up being a Tatooine problem. Like, we always end up going back to Tatooine. Like, we're always going to end up going back to these few figureheads that are just really, really bad. I really think because of the way that they've had such a tonal shift with Star Wars in the Ahsoka show, like, this is a Star Wars we've never seen before. Like yes, we've seen Rebels, and Rebels was and Clone Wars were very, very different from your Star Wars that were portrayed in movies. But this is something even deeper than that. There is so much more going on in Ahsoka than I think any other piece of Star Wars medium that we've seen so far. I mean, maybe in the comic books we've gotten more of this. I haven't read all the comic books, but I know, like, in Vader Immortal, or like in the Vader comics, like, there's definitely more. There's more to Vader. There's more of like the spiritual aspects, and they're like trying to like at one point, like, Vader like transcends space and time and ends up like as like a fire element, like walking through his past and like facing all of his evil doings and whatnot. Like, there's a whole thing in like the Vader comics where he kind of like does the same thing that Ahsoka kind of did. There's a kind of a tie-in right there. So yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I think it would be a huge disservice if they're just like, yep, here's the bad thing is the Empire again.
Yeah. I'm assuming we see Thrawn next week.
God, I hope so, because I was really hoping we were going to see him at the end of this, and I feel cheated. I feel, and that's why like I got like as soon as we got to the Purgle part, I was upset. And not upset like I was disappointed because like all of the stuff that we saw at the beginning and even at the end of the last episode felt very much like Disney Plus hung up on me last night. Disney Plus never does that to me, and Disney Plus buffered. I swear to God, there were more people on Disney Plus last night than there ever has been.
Well,
And I think all because people wanted to see what was going to happen with Anakin, and I felt kind of cheated because it wasn't as important to the Ahsoka show storyline as much as I hoped it was going to be. It was more impactful to the Ahsoka story as a whole. If you go from Ahsoka's story from the beginning of Clone Wars to Ahsoka's story at wherever we end, this episode is very impactful to the character. Now, to the overall story with like Thrawn and Morgan and Balin and Shin and the Rebels crew, like this entire episode meant nothing other than them getting inside the Purgle and blasting off to another galaxy. But like all of that was very, very important to the character development of Ahsoka as a whole. And so I appreciated that. But then we get to this part where we're just like, well, we're not even going to talk about Thrawn. We're not going to get like a after credit scene or nothing. Just like, I would love a little bit of reinforcement of, hey, here's the thing that you really, like a lot of people really want to see. And so I really, really hope that for the next 3 episodes, 6, 7, and 8, we've got 3 more episodes. You've got like this. I would definitely will not call this a filler episode, but it is not impactful to the Ahsoka show storyline. It's not. It does not coincide with anything that has happened so far. It means nothing to Balin. It means nothing to Shin. It means nothing to Morgan. It means nothing to Thrawn. It does nothing but help Ahsoka's character, which I'm totally fine with. But there's a lot of moving pieces in this show. So for the next 3 episodes, it better be balls to the wall. Because there's a lot. Are we just like, or we're going to end up with an Ahsoka season 2?
There was a finality to the end of this that was very like a chapter in a book.
That's why I said I think this is a beautiful love letter to Clone Wars. I think this was a great way to sign off and be like, hey, this is what all of these things. Like I think for Dave, these are all of these things that I created, and these are all of the things that I'm trying to show. And here is the final piece to this puzzle. It is Ahsoka facing all of the terrible things that she felt that she did, and she had to come to grips with it. Because really, Clone Wars is yes, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of characters, but it really is, if you look at it, it is a story about Anakin and Ahsoka. That's really it. It's really the story of Anakin and Ahsoka.
Yeah, I felt like it was a chapter. Love letter to Clone Wars is perfect. And I think it's almost a closure of Anakin and Ahsoka, even though it probably wasn't him per se. Now, like you said, we may still get a Force Ghost, but I think it would be in a very different context than we experienced with him here. So I think that was the curtain call for intermission. And like you said, we're in the 3rd act now. And it's just gonna like 6th gear. Let's go. And that's also if you look at Dave's other shows that he's worked on, everything ramps up at the end, like any good show. But final 4 episodes of Clone Wars, final season of Rebels. Forget about final 2 seasons of Rebels, to be honest, with filler episodes in between. But the end of that, and then even Mandalorian, the way the storytelling progresses really has very pivotal moments towards the end of each season, and then catapulting, except this season where it was like curtain call, thank you. You'll see Din in another story, like something like that. Now we know they're shooting or going to shoot Mando season 4 when there's no strike. So I'm interested to see, but I think this is it. Like lore drops, Easter eggs, action, Thrawn, Ezra. This is it. We're gonna get it now, and I think we're going to take a hard left turn into figuring out what Sabine and how this is all going to affect Sabine, because we put that story on the shelf, and that's Sabine, Ezra, and Ahsoka have a very interesting interaction coming up. And what state is Ezra in after all these years? That's the other big question.
Yeah, what has he been doing? So it's been 5 years,
Something like that.
a little bit longer than. What has he been doing?
What has been going on with him and Thrawn? Did they part ways? Were they ever actually together once the Purgle? No, it's longer than that because it's 5 years. So Mandalorian is 5 years after Return of the Jedi, but Thrawn and Ezra blast off before the Death Star's finished. So before Rogue One, like we're talking. So that was. Someone's gonna yell at me. I hate how you always get the dates wrong.
It's okay.
It's like it's so. What is that like? 10-ish years?
Yeah, just
right ish. It's been a hot minute. That's why you can also. That's why like the time. Everyone always had a hard time with Rosario Dawson being Ahsoka. I'm like, oh, it looks nothing like Ahsoka did. But like, look at the time difference. Like, look how much she has aged since then. They really brought that home in this episode.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the dates because I got one wrong a few weeks ago and somebody flamed me for it on Instagram.
Look at comments.
Yeah, I made the mistake of looking and they're like, yeah, she exactly right. Also, our Balin Qui-Gon discussion, it was World War III. Very respectful, very nice. Nobody was being mean, but it was World War III on the timeline in the comments of people supporting and against based on age and stuff like that. It was very funny. But now I lost my train of thought because we were talking about that. But yeah, moving into next episode or the next few episodes, I think we go into sixth gear, and it's I don't think there's any more filler. And if we look at the history of how these stories are told and things with Dave involved, I don't, I think it's a mini movie moving forward. That's
And it
how
has
I feel.
to be. Yeah.
I mean, Clone
agree.
Wars season 7, the last 4 episodes could be their own movie. It's literally Ahsoka's Order 66.
How long? What are the run times for the?
I don't know if we have them yet. Let's see. Ahsoka run times. How long are each episode of Ahsoka? Episode. No run times yet.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
I think he's keeping it a secret. First 2 episodes. Yeah. Episode 6 is at 46 minutes and 26 seconds, so pretty on average to what we've been getting. This one was a little bit longer, 5. There's nothing on 7 and 8, though. Yeah, the 6th runtime just came out last night, so I think Disney's leaking them the night before, the night of release from the previous episode.
All right. So just real quick, Rebels ends at it says 5 years BBY to 0 years BBY. So they blast off the same year that the Battle of Endor happens. Rogue One is 3 days BBY, or sorry, Battle of Yavin. Yeah, so Rogue One is 3 days BBY, and then you go into A New Hope, and then Return of the Jedi. Yeah, and then Mandalorian. Mandalorian it says 9 years BBY. I could have or ABY. I could have sworn it was 5 years. Well, I guess that would be 4 years into the 4 years. Yeah, okay, so it was 5 years. Yeah, so it was 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So yeah, it's been 9 years since we've seen Ezra and Thrawn.
Yeah, because the whole plot point of that was to explain why Thrawn didn't crush the rebellion. He
right,
would've.
exactly. And I just wanted to make sure that in my head I was doing the Star Wars math correctly. So it has been 10-ish years since we've seen we've seen them. So what the hell? So here okay, so let's theory craft real quick for Ezra. Mm-hmm. Has he been meditating? Has he been training with Force? So I would assume that Kanan is not Force Ghost Kanan because he didn't have the training that Yoda and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan had.
But you can get it after death, as per what happened with Qui-Gon.
Oh man, I mean, that's a whole another thing they need to explain. Also, I listened to Alex. Alex from Star Wars Explained did a very interesting how did Anakin become Force Ghost if he did not go through the same training that Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan went through? And he had this really interesting theory of as Anakin's spirit was about to join the cosmic force, Obi-Wan essentially intercepted him and kind of took him with him to be a part of the living force. And so I thought that was a very interesting take. So if you haven't listened to any of Alex's theory crafting over at Star Wars Explained, you should go check him out over on YouTube.
I would not be surprised if Freddy is not in it. Like, I have a feeling you can learn it after death. That's just the way I'm assuming it works. And I like Alex's theory about pulling you back, because Kanan had he was friends with a bunch of the Jedi. He was only a child, so he was learning. You know, we don't even know the whereabouts of Keller and Beck right now, dude. Like, that could play into all of this. Who knows? Like, and Keller would be an old man, wouldn't he? He'd be in his 50s or 60s at this point, no? Because he looks like 30 or 40 when the Purge of the Jedi Temple happens.
Yes.
So he's probably 50 or 60 now. So like that could play into that side of things. But on the Force Ghost side, I would say Anakin Force Ghost and Kanan Force Ghost are on the table. Kanan, though, to me would be Easter eggy post credits, like, here's you super fans, here's your meat type of thing. Anakin would be more of a closure for Ahsoka. And if there's more seasons of Ahsoka and we're not done telling the story, then I would even say that maybe we don't see him, or maybe he's the post credits with that. My biggest question mark, and the thing that I'm dying to know, is where the hell are they? What is there? Who was there first? How did they get to this galaxy? Like, these are the more important than anything else. That's what I want to know. I want to know the backstory behind Night Sister crap, what I assume to be Rakatan crap. Like, that's the stuff that I am dying to know in the next 3 episodes. Will I get all my questions
And they have
answered?
to do it in
No,
3.
They're not going to do it.
That's the
all
whole
in 3.
thing, though, is like, so like if they can't do it in 3, there's going to have to be another season.
Or this is all leading into his Heir to the Empire movie, supposedly.
Oh, I guess I keep on forgetting that the movie is going to be the culmination of like all of this with
Mandoverse.
Mando and
Or
it's gonna be the
Filoniverse.
Mandoverse movie. Yeah, I mean, you could be we could get left on a wild cliffhanger like we did in the Ahsoka episode with like, where's your master? Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn? Like that was the cliffhanger for Ahsoka. So it could be. I mean, like we've got and now with everything going on in Hollywood, like Lord knows when this is actually. I mean, this is all going to get pushed back. It's going to be a bit.
Yeah, supposedly it'll end before Christmas or in the like winter of next year.
And I hope for the sake of the actors and everybody involved, I really hope it comes out in their favor because
Of course.
Bob Iger doesn't need more money.
No, I mean, like, most of the people that work on these shows are not millionaires. Like, please understand that. The rigging guys, the audio guy. I know people that work not on Star Wars, but on other shows. They're making the same like money as you and me. Like, it's not.
Yeah, people are looking at the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah, the lead role. Like, do you know how many people are on a set to film a television show or a movie? Hundreds. And then there's thousands of people involved in production. Whether it's post-production, whether it's editing, whether it's CGI, whatever it may be. You have entire studios dedicated to one task on creating a show or a movie. So most of the people, I would venture to say 95%, and I'm probably lowballing it, make a regular ass wage. And they've been out of work for a while. So
And they live in Hollywood, so
yeah, that's even worse for multiple reasons. But I that's because I personally just can't stand LA. But just the expense alone. So yeah, please take that into consideration when you're thinking about all of this. Is that it takes an army to make this stuff, especially high budget stuff like that Disney Plus is churning out. And you know, the lion's share of the money goes towards the lead actors and the executives behind it. So I really do. I agree with Tim. I hope it works out in the favor of those folks and they get a livable wage. That's all they want is a livable wage. I don't see why that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
Anywho.
So we'll see how this all pans out next week. It's going to be very interesting. Should we go in the theaters, Tim, and see episode 5 in the theaters? Because it's out in the theaters.
No, I'm good. Like I found myself this morning like skipping through like the parts and just like getting to like the Anakin and Ahsoka stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the theatrical experience was fantastic. I'm sure seeing it in theaters was great.
It's such an interesting like.
It was weird that they picked that episode
I understand.
But at the same time, like I get why they did.
like you said, your Disney Plus was buffering.
Exactly. I mean, like it was intense. It was wild. Like I was really pissed off, and it was just like I get halfway through, and it was like right at a good part too. It was right when it's when Ahsoka says, "I would choose to live," and then the blue spinning wheel comes up. And I'm like, fuck. So yeah, it was wild. It was really, really cool. It's really cool to see people excited about Star Wars, and it was wild too because I went on the internet this morning looking to see if I could find anyone upset about the episode. And no one was like, all of the comments that I've seen overall, everyone is focused on, it's wild. No one focused on the second part of the episode. All of the content pieces that I have seen so far have focused on the Clone Wars live action stuff. And it's wild to see how people continue to rally around such an icon. Like, it's in my head, the Clone Wars is but a small piece to Star Wars, but so many people grew up watching the Clone Wars animated series that this is the most impactful piece of Star Wars content for them.
Now, before we go, looking at this and looking at everything, Kathleen Kennedy is probably going to retire in the next, would you say 3 years? Is that a fair assessment?
I honestly have no idea.
The woman's
At this
been
point,
with
I feel like
Lucasfilm
she's just
since before.
Well, she's been in second in command for the longest time. Like she did Indiana Jones with him, the original Indiana Jones.
Right, before we were born. So she's been at Lucasfilms since before we were born. If you're looking at this and you're Iger, the board, whoever is going to be making this decision, and you're looking at the reactions online of people very outspoken haters of a lot of the decisions that Disney has made. Granted, Tim and I have our opinions, but we're not nearly as outspoken on some of these things as some of these other folks. And they're happy. Doesn't it kind of indicate who you should pass the baton to at this point? Like, I feel
didn't we report on a lot of that was happening anyways? That a lot, like Dave was like going to end up taking her job. Like that was already like in the works.
But this is the social like confirmation.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, this is definitely pointing that all things lead to Dave Filoni as the next arbiter of the Star Wars mantle.
I'm scrolling through the Twitter hashtag now, and the most common picture I see is a man with his hands raised and a like sunset sky, and it's just Dave Filoni's head with a cowboy hat on.
The one that I saw was it was a pen and paper that were on fire. And it was just like scribbling on it, and it was just like Dave Filoni. It was just like writing fire. Like it was like he's going ham, and he's pulled out of the stops. Like there's definitely like no fucks being given. He's owned it. Like he knows like Star Wars is mine now, and he just gets to do whatever he wants. And I'm all for the Filoni universe because like it feels good. It's coherent. Everything has a sense of synergy to it, and it's a beautiful story that you can start. You can now start at Clone Wars, and hell, even before that, you can go all the way through, and you can and you've got this beautiful story that is being told, and in the stereotypical Star Wars storytelling that like we have to go back and fill the gaps, but now we've got this just really, really pretty story all the way through, and just like adding Andor in was like something I didn't know that I needed, but I'm glad I have it now.
I am getting to do that with my son, and I'm sure you'll get to do it however you want to do it too, but getting to watch it, and now he's like, can I watch Ahsoka? I'm like, no, please, for the love of God, you loved Clone Wars so much. Wait this out, follow my instructions. Let's watch Rebels first, then you can watch Ahsoka with me. Because man, that kid, like I told you, the end of Clone Wars, he was crying, Tim, when she was standing in front of the 501st with all the helmets on the stakes. He was crying. He's like, those were her friends. Those were the people she fought with. I was like, I know. And it sucks, dude. But I was like, it's like one of those things like this is. And then when Vader picked up her lightsabers, he was like, oh, are they going to see each other again? And I went, I don't know, buddy. And like, it's so enjoyable to be able to have a child go through it a very different path than you took to Star Wars. And to have it happen.
Disjointed.
And the character development, when you watch it that way, is so much better because like we were like here. He's just going like this, and he's loving it. And maybe from day one that was the intent. That was the long-term play, was that you could start at Phantom Menace and just enjoy the ride.
I don't think that was a long con.
I'm
But-
not saying George is long con. I think.
Oh
like,
yeah, okay. I was like, I don't think that. I think George had any level of intuition like that.
No,
but-
I think it's a Lucasfilm like post Disney acquisition. Like, what if
sure.
what if we arranged things in a way that the next generation of Star Wars fans, the next one, not you, not me, not even Audrey, my oldest daughter, the next generation gets to have a complete experience from end to end. And that's what I feel like they're doing a very good job of right now. Have they made mistakes? Hell yeah. Are they going to make more mistakes? Hell yeah. But for now, I think the journey is pretty awesome, and my son is absolutely loving it. We're almost done with season 1 of Bad Batch, so we're like well on our way to Rebels.
nice.
So he's walking around the house now and going, Rekka. And he's like, he goes,
the voice actor for Omega is in Starfield.
oh, is she?
She's a bartender. And we're walking through. If you've played, for those that are listening, if you've played Starfield, where you end up playing Starfield and you go to the Red Mile, I'm not going to say anything other than that. But the bartender is the voice actress, and you just hear you hear a word that you've heard Omega say, and I stop. I'm like, wait a second, is that Omega? And then the chat goes and like looks at it. Yep, sure enough. There's a couple of like famous voice actors that you would be familiar with that you've heard in like your favorite animated shows that are or even like video games, like Drifter's in there, and everyone's like, is that the Drifter? It's so good.
I said, like, what do you want to be for Halloween this year? He's like, maybe I'll be Hunter.
Hunter?
And I was like, Hunter's gonna be Hunter. So it's been good. But we're gonna get out of here. We will be back for episode 6, 7, and 8 of Ahsoka and more. But thank you so much for tuning in. Like, the support we've gotten during Ahsoka for Star Wars and Scotch has been absolutely incredible. Record numbers for Tim and I. So we sincerely just want to say thank you. Please continue to rate, review, subscribe. It helps us out immensely. And again, we encourage you to disagree and have a good time and chit chat with your friends. Just don't be a dick. That's all we ask. Just be nice and respectful, and people can disagree and have great conversations like Tim and I did last week about the World Between Worlds. Tim is Darkness429 on YouTube. Are you still on Starfield?
Today we won't be, but by the time you guys hear this, it won't matter anyways. So Starfield, we've been cruising through that. We got Lies of P next week. Super excited for that. Pinocchio with a Dark Souls take, which is going to be really neat. We're getting ready for, there's a bunch. October's packed. October's got a lot going on.
Spider-Man
it's
2.
gonna be a good time. Spider-Man's coming out. We got Lords of the Fallen. Gonna be a good time.
That's a remake, right?
I don't think so.
I thought it was a Lords of the Fallen remake of the old Xbox.
I don't know. It just looks like a good Dark Souls game. So Dark Souls-esque game. So I'm all for
Are
it.
you Baldur's Gate or Warhammer today? So people know for
We're
Wednesdays.
doing Warhammer today.
All right, Warhammer Wednesday is back on the menu. But like Tim said, by the time you hear this, you're going to miss it. So maybe next week. We'll see. And I'm Kevin. You can K-Magic 101, Kevin Exhibition.
And I'm Kevin.
I do this. This is the most important thing I do that you should all care about. So yeah, rate, review, subscribe on Star Wars and Scotch. That's all I really care about. We will see you next week for episode 6 of the Ahsoka series on Disney Plus. Thank you so much. And Tim?
May the Force be with you.